It is about everything. And so it isn't just about, serious looking at, did we achieve our deliverable outcomes today? It is, I'm watching the interaction in this group. I'm watching the interaction in the staff. I'm wondering about the environment and does it help or hinder what we're doing. I'm wondering whether Facebook is making, there's just so much that you could kind of make yourself a little crazy. But on the other hand, it's a huge resource to look, a way of looking at many different things and coding it. Then we've added another word, which is called participatory action research, which means that many eyes, many minds, and many hearts see each opportunity and every event in a different way. So I have my view, and then I talk to Yasmin, and Yasmin says, no, I don't see it like that. And then Carol says, oh my God, let me leave the room. And Joyce says, don't worry, it'll be all right. So there we have our dynamic, that we're trying to, we do see things differently, but in the difference is the richness. Because I only have this much, I only see this much, and every contact that I have with all the people in the room, in our cohorts, and with staff, is that it starts to do this. And I become a greater, hopefully, a better person as a result. When we ask participants to really honestly give us feedback and really be part of it, we make meaning of it together. So we started talking not just about the transactional deliverables, go and do this, take this, this module. We talked about the higher end, higher thinking, higher order reasons why we're doing what we're doing. And they got it. They wanted it. I have one gentleman today say, it changed my life. It was the best experience I've ever had because you were talking about things that were deep and that really mattered. Well, I didn't really think that's what we were going to be doing in the Vision program, but that's what happened. So, this is what we did. We planned, we acted, revised, and we did it again and again and again. And here's Yasmin. Oh, yeah. Doing one of her famous cafe experiences where everybody's writing and talking and laughing. It was amazing. That was cohort 2. So for any of you who don't know about action research, this is a nice little diagram, quite simple. It's basically cyclical. There are many different iterations, a lot of diagrams. This one is from a very well-known action research site in Australia. So you basically start, you do something, you reflect, you question, you act, and then you analyze, and you do that, and you do that, and you do that, until you gradually get closer to perfection. So action research, and I recommend this as an evaluative tool, because, funders like to have evaluations, and I really think evaluations done with action research make it a lot more cogent and a lot more sort of visceral, because they really tell you who knows better, really, than the participants. And if they are about to the stage of trust and respect, where they actually believe it's okay to tell you that it sucked, that particular element sucked, then you're going to get a better program. And so I think when we got to that stage where we were transparent and we treated them with trust and respect, we got a really good feedback, and we did. We changed. We took some things right out that they told us, no, we don't like that. It sucked. Okay. So we also made them move from passive to active. They were no longer, I have a picture, it's a very nice picture, but it spoke to me, I don't have it here, but of the first or second day of our first cohort. And we've created the tables, and they're sitting there like very good children in school with their hands on their desk, looking politely at the teacher. And I thought, much as that is probably where they come from, that's how it is, in Canada, that's not really how it is. So in the first place, we need to break the cultural mold, as they were telling us yesterday, of the never speak in class. In China, you never speak, only the teacher speaks, right? And in Iran, you never teach outside the curriculum. You never change anything. Well, we know that in Canada that's not an approach that's going to be helpful for them. So, you know, we have to model that in our programming too. So, moving them from this, I'm receiving the words of you know, the most wise person in the world approach to that really sucked, is progress. And that's what make our country a much more dynamic and rich place. And it also should reflect what we see, hopefully, not always, but sometimes, in our organizations in Canada. That there is debate, there is questions. So, this is the kind of stuff we did for our action research. We observed and we reflected. I have lots of really boring notes that I wrote to myself, some of which were very insightful, some of which were not. We had the staff debriefs, some of which were stormy and some of which were not. We did the evaluation of everything we did in great detail. We did interactive exercises like the World Cafe. We took immense number of photos, and if you spend time, which I do, it's like kind of like interesting activity. If you put all the photos that we have on this kind of rotating thing, and you look at the pictures, it tells you a lot of how the participants move from being there, but not really there, to so there it jumps right off the page. So the videos we took, not all of them of great quality, but nevertheless, it was like Ashrat today and Vivian in the first, we gave them the opportunity, we gave them the mic. That was one of the most symbolic things I think you could ever do, is give newcomers who often are so worried about their voice and their language, and say, here, take the mic and tell us what you say. I believe that was a sort of an act of faith. And really, as soon as we started giving them the mic, they began to grow and to believe that they actually could do this. And so the pictures of them with the mic, and I have some recordings where it was an exhilaration. So in this cohort, we were fortunate to have this facility where we had a mic all the time. And so they were just, no problem. We'd hang them out and they'd talk and they'd get up and then we don't need the mic, I'll just stand up and talk really loud, which for a newcomer often is difficult. No problem. That barrier had gone. We gathered all sorts of data about their country of origin, their level of education, oh man, I don't know when we're going to get that all together. This is a huge amount. Plus we had the summary debriefs. So that was all the action research that we gathered. And the goal of that action research was basically to see whether or not this could be duplicated and what it was worth duplicating, and whether it was going to reduce the barriers for newcomers in many different aspects of their life, from personal development to discrimination, etc. So what is resiliency? Let's move on to that. Is one of the reasons that some people succeed when faced with risks and others do not. And there's no resiliency without risk. And it focuses on strengths rather than deficits, so we have our strengths and we have our hopes over here. It is a skill. In other words, you can learn to be resilient, which is hopeful. And it is the capacity to basically transform and change, which is what I really believe. And it is innately a self-righting mechanism. So people can come and they are kind of bouleversés. They're turned over upside down when they come here because it's such an immersive experience to come to another country. But somehow, over time, like the little duck, they right themselves and they're upright and they're moving along. So that was one of the sort of underlying practices that I think we need to explore more, is how do you look at how to build resilience into the newcomer and new immigrant perspective. So when you talk about factors that contribute to resiliency, there's internal, so that you always start with the inner you, and then there's the external factors, such as, so we have the families, the peers, the social connections, et cetera, and then you have the personality characteristics and all that stuff that are internal and external. So when we went to, next slide, this was the internal elements that we had to start with. You have to start with empowerment. Social sensitivity. So we did a lot of talk about cross-cultural communication, empathy, awareness. So, you know, when you think you're the only person, as people said, I think I was the only person like this, then all of a sudden somebody else like that, all of a sudden you can broaden your self sort of focus to a broader empathy, a cultural sensitivity, a building of your self-confidence, a rebuilding of your self-concept, and a self-control mechanism, because often when we're in distress, we do the things that are least likely to help us. And then often in the case of newcomers, it's withdrawal, it's into habits that basically take us away from our success. So I used a model here, which is a Canadian model by a Dr. Hammond in Saskatchewan, Alberta, which is very nice because it talks about the core elements, and then it talks about the elements on the outside. And he has a really great approach. And so I developed a questionnaire which I asked the last cohort to basically fill out where they were resilient. And I asked them to do a very demanding exercise, which they did amazingly well, where they looked at their 5 strengths and their 1 needs improvement. But I think this is another element that needs to be addressed in programming, in support, and the multi-levels of our programming.